Woo!
Paging all badass bag makers. If you aren't a badass bag maker, you can still watch. That's fine. That's fine. So today we're gonna make the Kindle Bestie size of the book Bestie, and we're gonna do the classic button flap. We've got our little custom buttons here. So if you want to learn how to make this, follow along. And if you can like and subscribe, that'll help me. Okay, friends? Thanks. Okay, so today for the book Bestie, our pieces are our front and our back exteriors, 2 liners, and we're going to do the classic button flap today. So I have an exterior and the liner. I have my piece of elastic loop for the button. I have these custom buttons I got made from Carolina Little Stitches. And I'm going to try this new, I'm just going to put this behind my button, like a little showcase for it that matches my flap. So let's get going. Okay, make sure you find the centers of all your pieces. I'm going to do it as I go. First, we're going to attach the button loop to our, you're going to want to find a center on both sides of this. We're going to attach our button loop first. Okay, so we're going to line up our button loop down here in the center. Go ahead and fold it like this. You will have no twists, okay? Line that up right along the center mark you made, and we're gonna baste it. It must be facing away from your edge, okay, the loop, because it'll end up folding down. So go ahead and baste this loop in place. Now we are going to draw our seam allowance. We will be sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so just to make these corners nice, I like to just draw it in so they're like that. Whenever I do flaps, I always draw my seam allowance. Doesn't matter the shape. Okay. Now let's align our flap pieces, lining and exterior, right sides together. And you can always tell the right side of water resistant canvas because it's smoother. This one's more scratchy and this one's more smooth. You can like feel the difference. All right, let's go ahead and line these up, right sides together. And we're gonna flip this over and sew from the side that we drew our seam allowance on so we can see it. Okay. I'm gonna pop down to a 4.5 stitch length. Back stitch at the beginning. And hand crank so that you make sure your needle lands right on the line that we drew. Then you can pivot and go back down. And we'll just repeat this all the way. back stitch over that elastic a little bit, not too much, but you do want it to be secure. Back stitch at the end. Okay, now we're gonna flip it right side out, but before we do, trim down your seam allowance to 1/4 of an inch and cut straight across, kind of close to your stitches, but not too close when you get to the corners. You don't have to trim where this elastic goes. I probably won't, just to make sure it doesn't have any issues down the road. All right. Go ahead and turn that right side out. You can use your finger to push out the corners or a corner tool if you have one. Just going to use my fingers and roll the seams. The main point you want to do is make sure that your lining doesn't come up like this. Okay, roll it back behind so that when we top stitch, you won't see that. I'd also use one of these hand clamps and press your corners to get that bulk to lay down nicely. It should be pretty minimal since you trimmed it, but this is a thicker glitter vinyl that I haven't used before, so I'm just making sure. Go ahead and don't pull on your elastic, just kind of roll your seams here. Okay. This water resistant canvas is from Mormino, and you can use an iron on medium or low and iron on this side. See how it's a little wrinkly? We'll go ahead and do that after we top stitch. Just rolling and pressing. It naturally wants to roll like that since it's thinner material on the back, but we're just gonna force it to behave. All right, now we're gonna top stitch. I top stitch at a 5-stitch depth. When you're coming up to the corner, just slow down. You can even hand crank to make sure you get your stitches nice, and you want your needle to fall right in the corner. So if it's not, you can kind of adjust your stitches as needed and fudge them a little there to make it land right in that corner where you need it. Pivot and come down this way, still rotating your seam under so that your lining doesn't pop out onto the front. Hand crank into that last corner. Okay, doing great. All right, so there she is, beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and iron this with a medium heat iron. So now we've got to choose what panel we want to be the front and the back. These are pretty much the same. So I think I'll do the one where Aurora's kind of to the left because I want to put my button right here in the middle, and that way it won't cover her because that's really who this button badge matches the best. That's why I picked this color. So we are going to make this our back, and let's add our nameplate. So I got this cork printed label from the Heartwood and Hide, and I like to always do a coordinating matching vinyl behind with a 1/4 inch border just to schnazz it up a little. So Jade sent me these badge backing templates, and they make it pretty simple. Now I'm just gonna lay it down and trace it. And now we can cut. I'm still going to use a rotary blade and ruler for the straight edges. This vinyl is from Backstitch. It's such a pretty color. It's just a little thicker, so you have to really press to cut. Okay, now we can take our scissors and just do not use one continuous sweep and just follow the curve around. That's how you get your corners nice. I have lots of practice with this though, because I used to do it without a little template. Okay. Now what you're going to want to do is, this backing is fuzzy and we do not want that fuzzy popping out. So we're going to take a lighter and just run the flame along the very edge. Don't put it on the exterior, we're just getting the backing here. It will make it melt down a little bit almost. This is what I do when I have fuzzy backings and I'm making one of these. So now you don't see the white fuzz. Go ahead and put a piece of double-sided tape on the back of this actual logo, printed logo tag. Okay, and we're going to center it in there. It should fit just perfect. Yep. All right, push that down. Now we're going to top stitch the cork logo badge onto the badge backing. Go ahead and grab a piece of waterproof canvas. I use the kind that has the PVC backing, like kind of the old school version. You're going to want to protect your printed logo from the feet of your machine. Okay, here we go. Go ahead and line up your needle in the corner. We're going to do an 1/8 inch. I do this at 4.5 stitch length. And then run this, it's almost like a seam guide as well. Okay. Go ahead, you can hand crank or use your pedal, but when I get close to the edge, I hand crank just to make sure I get right down in the corner and it's even. If you can at this point, pull your thread through to the back because we're going to tie it off and burn it. Singe it to seal it. Now, when I pivoted, I still have, this is probably more at 3 It's a little more than 1/8, and I really want to make sure I get 1/8. So we'll just round the corner here and make it so that the edge of my foot is all the way down. Go ahead and go down this edge and get till you're in this corner, and you can do the same and just kind of pivot. This one will make it all the way, so we're fine. Go up. So we're going to come all the way back down into the original stitch hole we started with, and that's where we want to end in. So go slowly. We're coming down. Looks like I need one more stitch. So I'm hand cranking, and when I'm going to come down on this last stitch, I'm going to lift up my foot and kind of position my needle into that hole and then go down. Your stitches don't have to land perfectly. You can fudge the length of them. People don't notice. Or if they do, they don't say anything. So go ahead and pull that tail so you can pull the thread from the front to the back. And now we will tie these off. I just tie excuse me, them both together. 3 knots, clip close. And then we'll singe and press it down. Are you gonna burn your finger a little when you do that? You get a little, you know, nerve stimulation for sure. So here's what that looks like. Looks great. All right, now we're gonna find the centers of the rest of our pieces if you haven't already. On the top and the bottom, we'll need the centers. For this one, let's go ahead and put tape on the back of our badge that we've created. Try to keep it out of your seam allowance if your machine doesn't like sticky tape. We're gonna kind of center it on this back. Let's see. I'm gonna come up 2.5 inches from my bottom. That's pretty good. Now we can do the same stitching we did here, but on the actual backing of your badge. I do not have to use a piece of waterproof canvas to protect this part. It's really just the printing that you're worried about. And you're not back stitching, so you can pull your threads to the back. When I come down to the corner, I hand crank. Okay. And I kind of just use my knee lift and rotate a little and kind of fudge where the needle should go by positioning it where I want it to be to maintain that 8-inch seam allowance. And it kind of gives it a nice rounded effect. Coming back down, we're going to do the same thing. And see, if I just would have let it go where it normally would, it would be like right on the edge and it wouldn't match very well. So we're gonna just kind of fudge it, and it's okay if it's not the stitch length is a little shorter because you're repositioning it. You really can't tell at the end. Okay, coming back down. So I'm really liking this glitter vinyl. I'm going to go ahead and pull my thread to the back. It doesn't show teeth marks since my pressure is up pretty high. It's not showing any teeth marks. Sewing well. Not too thick. Really love the color. Alright. So we're going to land back into this original beginning stitch hole. Should go in there pretty well. All right, now let's pull our threads to the back and tie it off just like we did before. I got this really cute character vinyl from Fabric Therapy, and this is the first time I'm sewing Fabric Therapy's printed vinyl. This is the canvas backed. It's really nice. I'm having a great experience today. We all know it doesn't always go that way, but today it does. All right, so there you go. Looks marvelous. So this will be our back now since we have our badge here. Go ahead and find the center of your other exterior panel piece if you haven't already. Okay, now we're going to take our back and our completed flap. We're going to put them right sides together, so your nice side down, and line up your center marks for both. Clip in place. We're going to baste this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. My basting stitch is going to be 4.5 since I'm attaching pieces. I want to make sure it stays on well, and make sure you're only stitching on the flap. Back stitch as well. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna attach this little button badge idea that I wanted to do. Kind of matches my back logo badge. Just put a piece of double-sided tape there. And let's see where we kind of want to line it up before we sew everything together. We will put our button on last to make sure everything lines up. You could do it first if you wanted, but I'm trying to kind of see where it lines up here. I'm going to line up both of these. Since normally you put the button on last and I'm kind of doing this button badge idea, I kind of want to see where the flap would land. I know it would have kind of a, probably round about there. So we're going to kind of wing it. We're living on the edge here. Let's make sure we get it in the center. I'm just going to verify that it's in the center. Okay, that's 4. Yep. Hopefully our calculations were correct. It's always scary trying new things. I moved it up just a little bit just in case. Oh, and now I got it off center. I think. Yep. There we go. And all I did to get this was I found something that was like a little bit bigger than my button, which happened to be a bottle of edge paint, Giardini, the smaller ones, and I just traced it and cut it out. I burnt the edges just how I showed you so the fuzzies weren't there. So now let's go ahead and just top stitch around this. I'm going to do 4.5 since that's what we did on our badge bagging. And I'm just going to hand crank to make sure that this looks nice. I'm just rotating and using my knee lift to get that accomplished. And so it's kind of an experiment because we'll see, you know, if this is something you want to do, we can test out. I'll let you know how far up this one is from the bottom. Go ahead and pull your thread to the back if you can. Okay, check if it's gonna land right down. It won't, so I'm just gonna kind of put it halfway in between and rotate it. All right, back down in our beginning stitch hole. And go ahead and singe your thread. Okay, there we go. So this right now has a diameter of 1.5, okay, and it is 1 and almost 7/8 up, 4 inches in from each side. So that's where this is now. We'll see if it ends up working out. You could attach this now if you wanted. We won't, we'll save it for the end. Okay, put your 2 exteriors right sides together. And we are going to sew these together with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And when we do this seam allowance, we're gonna do it down both sides and the bottom. This is not how the pattern, she orients the pattern like this, so this would be the left side, the top, and the bottom, but you're basically leaving the side with the flaps attached to open, okay? And when you're sewing down, it's gonna come pretty close to the edge here and you're gonna maybe freak out, but it's okay, just roll with it, it'll work. You get down to this bottom, you back stitch, and don't cut your thread, just pull it a little and rotate. And then line it for 3/8 inch. And then back stitch at the beginning. Stitch at the end. You can cut these threads if you want to, don't need to. And you're going to, you can clip down your seam allowances if you want to. I think I'm gonna leave them so that they can be nice and nest together with the lining. Okay, we're gonna box our corners. So just reach your hand inside and poke your finger up into that corner and just push open your seams, and you're gonna pinch them like that. You want the top seam and the bottom seam to line up, okay? You're making a triangle. Look inside, make sure your seam lines are lining up. You can clip. And we're gonna sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? And you can just push it down. It's a little rough, it's okay. It'll be fine. Make sure your seams line up because you don't want a cattywampus seam. It's the worst. And backstitch well in this corner. See, my vinyl shifted on me. And I do not want a crooked seam. Nope. All right, listen here. Crooked seam. Here we go. And repeat that with the other side. Also trim down this just a little bit, not much, just a little. Push our finger in the corners, spread out our seams, and push together. Make sure your seams line up on the inside. And sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which for me is just the edge of my foot. So our exterior is done. Now let's move on to our interior. Place this right sides together and clip. First, actually find your centers on these tops, especially, so that when we put this with the exterior, it will line up well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grade our seam allowance. This isn't in the pattern, but I find it helps the lining to lay nice and without bunching up too much. So we're going to start at 3/8 inch seam allowance for about 1 inch, and then we're going to grade down to 1/2 inch. So you can take your ruler and do 3/8 inch for the first inch, okay, and then pop it on over to about 1/2 and then draw. Okay, and we'll just gradually, you can even take your like this, okay? We want this to still be 3/8 so that it matches up with our exterior when we fit them together. You're also going to leave a 4-inch turning hole in the bottom. So kind of mark that out for yourself. Okay. This will still be a 1/2 inch sewn down here. And then we're going to do the same. 3/8 inch for like the first inch. And then bump it up to 1/2 for the rest. And then you can just kind of grade that, okay? So back stitch at the beginning. And then just kind of follow your mark to grade it along to 1/2 inch. Stop in the corner and rotate. And then we're going to go down to our mark for our opening. When we get down to that mark, backstitch really well, okay? Because you're going to be pulling through on that. Go ahead and lift your needle, but keep everything attached. Just pull down. So we're about where that mark is. And then go ahead and backstitch again really well. Okay. Coming all the way down to our box corner. Now you can just rotate. Now we're coming back down and just follow the line you drew to go back and grade up to 3/8 inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the end. And that's that. I'm going to add a woven label on my bottom here after I turn it, but you could add one on the side here if you wanted. I just kind of like opening the bag and seeing it at the bottom. There we go. Now, do not trim your seam allowance for the first like inch, but trim down the rest to about 1/2. Okay, 1/4 inch. And then just, you can kind of leave this a little sharper. Trim this down too, but until you get to where you stopped your stitching, and then just kind of box it off, okay? And then we're going to box these corners. The same way. Go ahead and box these corners at like a 1/2. I do like a 1/2. You could do a little less if you wanted. Since our other corners are boxed at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you could do like a 3/8 inch if you wanted here. I'm just finger pressing down these seams, and you'll have to just visually look in and make sure everything lines up in the bottom there. So I'll do like a 3/8 inch seam allowance, I think. Go ahead and trim that down. Repeat for the other side. Just kind of finger pressing that seam open. You can actually do that for the entire length of the seam just to make it lay nicely inside the bag. We place the interior inside the exterior. Now up here, make sure you do go press this open. You can finger press it or use an iron. I'm gonna go down the whole length and finger press just to make this lay a little flatter inside the bag. Also, go ahead and take your piece to the iron, and you're gonna wanna, this little extra flap we left out, kind of either finger press it or iron it. It'll make the final stitch to close up the bag very easy if we do this, okay? Okay, now we're gonna flip our exterior right side out. Trying not to get that many wrinkles if I can avoid it. And if your vinyl is too stiff, just go get a blow dryer. go. Easy enough. Okay. Kind of open up those side seams with your fingers. And we're going to keep our lining wrong side out. Okay, now slide this guy inside of your lining. And line up your corners. You may need to pull your bottom up a little bit because we graded our seam allowance, so to fit this down in there. So match up your side seams. First. That's my first, what I would do first. I'm just pulling this exterior up a little bit so it's not so smushed in there. So I can fit these corners together nicely. Line up the center marks we have. All right, now we're going to attach this. Let's go ahead and sew this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to kind of pull back this out of the way and just pick somewhere to start. I'm taking care to line up the edges really well. Now when I get to this corner, I'm kind of going to rotate my project, kind of smush it up and get it rotated around. So I can keep this seam straight and just keep plucking through. It should rotate back around pretty well. Same thing, I'm just pulling this through and rounding it around so that I can go ahead and get this side seam. We're almost back to where we started. Back stitch. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to pull through this bottom seam carefully. We don't want to rip this. So I'm going to just reach inside and take my corner and pull it through here. Try not to get wrinkles on your flap. You can avoid it. Also, if this is too small of a turning hole, you can make it a little larger. And you can also bust out your blow dryer if you need to. Just gonna work one corner through first. what we call birthing. There. Phew, we made it. All right, now you can stick your hand in this birthing hole. See, I should have made this 5 inches or 6 because my hands barely fit. I don't even think they fit without ripping the stitches. We're gonna try. Not really. Okay, we're just gonna smush our hand down there and push out your corners really well. Okay. Get that seam flat down here. You can press it with your fingers if you didn't. Okay, I'm just pressing along all my seams. All right, now we are going to fold the lining inside. We're basically rolling the edges, and we're going to top stitch. Okay. This vinyl is really awesome because even with all that turning and stuff, no wrinkles. So that's awesome. And I do not trim my seam allowance when I attach the exterior to the interior because for me personally, I top stitch better when I have a bigger seam allowance left than trying to trim it down. It's like too tiny of a little ridge to. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and I'm just putting my fingers into the lining hole and making sure that these side seams are spread open so they can lay flat nicely when I use this. I'm not sure what you actually call these, pliers maybe? Like, they're pressing pliers you use for the key fob hardware. Okay, I'm just rolling these seams and clipping. And I think we put our button badge too low. So that sucks, but that's okay. Live and learn. Now you know when you make it to make it higher. We'll see how much higher. Maybe it'll work still, who knows. Okay, this is all pressed out nicely. I'm gonna push my lining down in here. Okay. You can iron right here if you want as well, just to make sure. And on this side, just really push this away from the flap. Now you can top stitch from the inside of your make if that's how you want to do it, or you can just flip it again inside out so that, and I'm going to because I top stitch better this way personally. I should have probably flipped the order of the exterior and interior when I attached them together. Okay, I'm just pushing this down and away. We're gonna top stitch this way so that my actual top is the exterior. Change it to a 5 stitch length. And then start in a corner if you can, so that when you tie off, I'm gonna tie off my threads, not backstitch. Then it'll kind of be nestled in the corner, where it'll be at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Check your bobbin thread now, make sure you have enough, just in case. All right, here we go. And this is kind of bent. I'm just gonna follow the curve around. I must have, and I'm just pushing this exterior vinyl away from my flat so it's nice and okay. And just pull this and rotate it around. Keep your needle down, rotate it around your foot again. There we go. Go ahead and pull your thread through if it's in your way like it is mine. Okay. Push the seam flat in the corners so that you don't get any possible nesting. All right, go ahead and try and land in the beginning stitch hole. Oh my gosh, we won Bobbin Chicken on camera. Look at that, we literally won. Go ahead and pull your thread through. Oh, it looks like I should have did one more stitch and didn't go through. That's okay. Go ahead and tie off your threads and singe them. This one side's kind of short. Trying to think, do I need thread for anything else? Ooh, I will need some thread to close the bottom, but since my lining's black, I'm gonna use black thread to close the bottom up. Just singeing the threads, pushing that down. All right, go ahead and push the exterior out again and tuck in your lining corners real well. And everything should fit really nice together. Shouldn't have a baggy lining at all. And you can see we don't. So go ahead and pull out your interior, because we're going to sew close to this bottom now. And if you had ironed where I had told you, you should have a real nice fold line. That'll make it easy to line up where the edges go. And look at these. I had these labels made for myself, not to sell, but I probably will give them away here and there. I just really like them. Is it focusing? So I'm going to put this in the bottom centered, and I'm just going to kind of guesstimate. Just tuck that little guy in there. And it does say badass on both sides, so. Alright, I'm just, okay, yeah. If you ever need to know the center of things real quickly, if you take your two fingers on anything that you need to know, and you just boop them together, your body should move them at the same time, and you should be in the center. I don't even know where I learned that trick, but it works. All right, now just sew along this edge. You can go the whole way to make it even, or just where your stitching ends for connection here. All right, let's go. I threaded my black thread. Let's go ahead and just sew that up. I'm going to use a 4.5 stitch length, and I do back stitch. Make sure your flap is out of the way. And singe these little threads that are poking through and your endings. All right, go ahead and push your lining back down in there. And everything should fit super nice since we graded that seam allowance inside. Take your time. Get your blow dryer out if you need to. But, oh, this is tight like a tiger. Let me tell you what. All right, now let's see where our button should go. So we're gonna fold it down, and yep, I did it too high. See? So, what can I do? Nothing. I can't do anything about that. I would suggest if you're doing the classic button flap and you followed all the directions that I did, let's see how far you should have went up. So instead of 1 7/8, I would have went probably 2 7/8. Just do 2.75 inches up from that bottom when you attach this, if you're going to do it that way. I'm going to do it, I'm going to still center my button here. All right, let's go ahead and get our hand sewing needle and some thread. I'm going to use matching hot pink thread, my favorite hot pink thread by Size Flag. Okay, go ahead and thread through your needle, tie up your ends. No, you just ruined my video. Okay, we are going to come up through the lining. Make sure your button's centered. Let's see if that's centered. All right. Come up through this back here. Interesting. That's stuck. All right. Okay, before I continue, I did this last time on my button. There's little hearts here, and I want the hearts to be pointing the right side up. Okay, there we go. And Caroline Little Stitches also has really cute button packs. She's got spicy ones for like romance book spicy, and regular ones that are fun. Just trying to pull this string through. Dang, bent my needle and everything. Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a knot right there. Oh, that'll do it. Okay, I'm just centering it, and then I'll probably just loop it through 1 or 2 more times and undo this knot so I don't drive myself crazy. All right, we got our buttons sewed on, and there's the inside. I burned the threads here. You could do this when there's no lining here, but it's kind of hard to match up that. But I did give you the measurements, so you could do it if you did the Kindle size. there's our little tag. Okay. And then when I close it, because this is elastic and stretchy, it's okay. It's not exactly up high enough. It actually works well. How cute is that? We did it, friends. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how nice that lining sits in there? She is a nice Kindle bestie. Just goes right in there. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Yes, our button's a little strained. It's okay. That's okay, friends. He's still cute. He's real cute. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. I saw the sun and it opened up my eyes. What book are you reading, huh? You should read a book. Read one. I love this thing. Every day I use it. If you don't have one of these, you probably should get one.